So, Michael, you were also there when the Bhakti Sutras were recorded, Narad Bhakti Sutra?
Nadar's Bhakti Sutras, of course, that started in Los Angeles, California. And oddly enough, before I got involved with Art of Living, I was involved in a group called Making Love Work. And we rented their facility for a series of 3 talks with Gurudev. And that's where he started to talk about divine love. And then we went all over North America with the tour on this. And yeah, it was really fascinating.
So there is this story about diamond cutter conversation, no, with you and Gurudev. Some beautiful conversation happened there.
Yeah, so I didn't know if I shared that story the last time or not, so I can share it now. So we had a silence course in Los Angeles in the Pacific Palisades, and I had rented a camera, and I brought the camera and the lights and the microphone, and this was the very first time that we had recorded Gurudev on video. And during every time I would record, people would get upset with me because in those days, the groups were so intimate. If there were 80 people on a silence course, that was a pretty crowded silence course. And we would sit very close to him. You know, there were no rules or anything. And all of a sudden, this big camera comes and lights and a microphone. And people had to move away from the camera because it was quite a consumer camera. So I had to shoot above people's heads and people had to move out of the side. And there was one teacher, her name was Janelle. She was so furious with me. She would just say, you know, you're destroying the whole Art of Living organization, all the intimacy and the beauty of being so close to the master. We don't have that anymore because of you and your camera. I mean, she was a quite intense individual. And anyway, at the end of the silence course, we were going up to British Vancouver for the Guru Purnima celebration. And Gurudev was going to give some talks while he was up there. So I asked him, Gurudev, when I go up to Canada, do you want me to bring the camera with me? And he said, absolutely, bring the camera with you. You know, we'll record some things that will be historical. So I said, okay. And I'm leaving the course and I'm going to my car. And there's Janelle again. And she just looks at me and she goes, Michael, we're all going up to Canada and we're going to have the Guru Purnima celebration. Whatever you do, don't bring that camera with you. Because if you bring that camera, everything that we hold dear to us of being close to the Guru and sitting close to him, that's all going to get destroyed. I mean, she just badgered me. So anyway, it's the day of leaving to go to the airport. And I like to pack really lightly. So I'm packing my bags and I'm getting ready to get into a taxi, and I have the camera and the lights and the microphone, and it's a lot of equipment. And I really took heed to what Janelle was saying. And I thought, oh, I'll just leave it all at home and I'll just go. So I go to Canada and I get there a little late. And I arrive when Gurudev is giving one of the Bhakti Sutra talks. And through the whole talk, he's looking at me and he's making these gestures and eye movements. I really don't get what he's saying. And then the talk is over and we go back to somebody's house and we have a satsang. And I'm staying in the house next door. And I leave and I go to the house and I go to bed. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, the host of the house that I'm staying in knocks on my door and says, Michael, Gurudev is on the phone. He wants to talk to you. Oh, Gurudev. So I get up. And in those days, there's no cell phones. There's not even cordless phones. So I had to go out and speak in the hallway where the phone is. There I am in my underwear and T-shirt. And I'm talking to Gurudev on the phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. And he says to me, how are you? And I'm fine. And are you comfortable where you're staying? Yes, Gurudev, I'm completely comfortable. And he says, you weren't sleeping, were you? No, 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 I wasn't sleeping. And he said, Michael, didn't you ask me if you should bring the camera to Canada? And I said, oh, yes, Gurudev. Well, why didn't you bring the camera? And I had nothing to say. And he says, don't my words mean anything to you at all? And Jai Gurudev. And then he hangs up the phone. And it's like, and then he said to me, go rest. And then he said, Jai Gurudev, go rest. Where is the rest? I remember lying in my bed and just looking at the ceiling and becoming intimate with the ceiling and knowing every crack on that ceiling. And I was just a wreck when I woke up in the morning when Gurudev said that to me. Don't my words mean anything to you at all? So I ran over to the house where he was staying, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting at his door just waiting for him to open the door. And he opens the door, and I come in, and I just started crying. I felt so guilty that I had not brought the camera with me. And Gurudev looked at me and he says, go rent a camera. He says, what we're going to talk about, many people will want to hear and watch. Go rent a camera. And I said, okay. So here I am on a Sunday afternoon in Vancouver, don't know anybody at all, don't know where to go. And I'm using the yellow pages and I'm hunting for where can I rent a video camera. And finally, I found a place, and probably around 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, I finally got up to where we were all staying, and I brought the camera with me. And I did all the recordings, and Gurudev spoke during the original Bhakti Sutra tour on Guru Purnima Day, another Guru Purnima story that I'm sharing with you. And it was an incredible talk that he gave. He was talking about Krishna and how on his last days, he was lying in bed and he was talking about the devotion of the gopis. And it's the love of the gopis, the devotion of the gopis that fill him so much. Krishna fills him so much. And as Gurudev is talking to all of us and he's telling us this story about Krishna, tears just run down his face. And no one had ever seen this before, that Gurudev would have some emotional experience, that, all the longing and the love, just was so intense, so thick in the room. And Gurudev is just crying for a minute or two. And then I understood, perhaps this is one of the reasons why I'm recording this and why he wanted a camera. And the event was over, Guru Purnima was over, and I remember taking the video and playing it back in the camera, and it came out really fantastic. I did a really good job. And, the whole silence course was over, Guru Purnima was over, and we go back to the city. And this time I'm really lucky. I get to stay in the house where Gurudev is staying. And all of a sudden, Gurudev says, did you record the video? And I said, absolutely, Gurudev. It came out really nice. He said, I want to see it. I said, okay, fine. So I have to get the camera, and because there was no video player in the house. I had to take the camera as the video player, and I had to connect it behind the TV. And I pushed the play button, and nothing comes out. It's just snow. Just, like distortions, nothing. And Gurudev has his beads and he's swinging his beads and he says, why didn't you record it? This was such an important talk. How could you not have recorded? No, Gurudev, I recorded it. It came out just perfect. Let me see. Maybe it's something with the wires. And here I am behind the TV and I'm perspiring because I'm feeling all this pressure. I know he wants to see it and I'm pulling this wire and I'm pulling this wire. And then there's maybe 8 or 10 people in the room. And Gurudev, as I'm with my head behind the TV, he says to this other Art of Living teacher, Janelle, who happens to be there. He says, Janelle, why don't you give some criticism to Michael of what you think of him as a teacher? And then Michael could give some criticism to you as a teacher, and then the two of you will become stronger. This is the criticism process that many people know that we do in courses. Maybe this is the first time it happened. And so with not being able to, I'm just coming out of the TV and all I'm hearing are these words from Janelle. And she's just saying, Gurudev, of all the teachers that we have in the United States, Michael Fischman is the absolute worst teacher. He is so egotistical and so self-centered and so rude and so, has no compassion for anyone at all. And I was just like shocked to hear this. And I was completely taken off guard. And Gurudev looked at both of us and he said, good, continue. And he swung his beads, and then he left the room. And that was the most humiliating moment that I had ever gone through, because out of all the things that were precious to me, the most important thing to me was being an Art of Living teacher. I had looked at so many different opportunities in my life, and the only thing that had any value for me, the only thing that ever made me feel connected to life itself, was becoming a teacher. And for somebody to say this to me in front of Gurudev, it was just like, it was excruciating. And after Gurudev left, the two of us had a huge argument. We were fighting and screaming at each other for like probably 2 or 3 hours. By 2 o'clock in the morning, I just gave up and I just went to the room that I was staying in. And I passed Gurudev's room, but I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to communicate with him because I just felt so humiliated. But there was a little light that was on in his room. And as I passed by, he called out to me and he had me come into his room. And it was very hard for me to hold the tears back, because I just felt like, is this what he thinks of me? Is this why he had this teacher, Janelle, why he had me hear all this stuff? And then he was packing his suitcase because he was leaving in the morning to go to another city. And he was trying to get the suitcase closed, and it was very full. And he says, you know what? I have to lighten my suitcase. And he said, what can I take out of here? And he took one small shawl. And as he took that small shawl out, he just took it out and he says, let me get rid of this. And then he put the shawl over me and just draped it over me. And I could just feel all the love. And then as soon as he put the shawl over me and he went through this gesture of draping me in it, that moment is when Janelle McQueen walked past the room to her room, and she could only see Gurudev putting the shawl over me. And I just felt so vindicated, like, yes. And he just shared with me, he said, when somebody criticizes you, don't try to defend yourself. Don't make it as though it's a battle between you and that other person. If somebody is giving you criticism, know that there's some truth there, that there's something that you need to learn there. And let me be your defense. You don't need any other defense. You don't need to defend yourself. Just let me be your defense. And I just broke down and I started weeping. And then I went home. I went back to Los Angeles. And, when we were in Vancouver, Gurudev was talking about sending me to Russia to teach. There were no teachers in the Soviet Union, and no teachers had gone to Russia or Poland or any place like that, where now, Russia and Poland has really blossomed. So many people have taken the course. So he was talking about sending me. And I was quite excited about going. I thought that would be a wonderful thing, wonderful adventure for me. And so the phone rings in the morning, probably around 9 o'clock. I just got done with my meditation, and it was Jeff Hauk. Jeff Hauk and I are very dear friends. We've been friends for many years. And he was an administrator within the organization, and I was a full-time teacher. I don't know if I was full-time or not at this time, but I was a teacher. And Jeff tells me, I just spoke to Gurudev on the phone, and he said, you should get your visa to go to Russia as soon as possible. He wants you to go over there and assist Judson. Judson was another teacher. And I said, what do you mean assist Judson? There's no glory in going over to another country and being somebody else's, someone's assistant. Because in my mind, what I thought assistant was, I was going to carry their luggage or I was going to walk behind them. I was a teacher. In fact, I had more experience than Judson at this point in time. I had taught already 3 courses where Judson had only taught 1. I mean, we were just so fresh with all of this stuff. We were just so new in teaching. And I got off the phone with Jeff, and then I called Gurudev on the phone, and I said, Gurudev, you want me to go to Russia? I'm very happy to go to Russia, but do you want me to go and be Judson's assistant? And I said, but I'm so much more experienced than him. And Gurudev said, no, you could learn so much from Judson. You just go and get your visa and it'll all be fine. And he hangs up the phone. And I just felt like everything that happened during Guru Purnima and all those things that Janelle had said about me, that must be exactly how he viewed me. Maybe I am too arrogant. Maybe I am really foolish. Maybe I am so self-centered. And there's just no hope for me to really be a good art of living teacher. I was completely depressed. I was just like, what do I do with my life now? And I had a little job in those days. And I worked for this company doing some marketing, and nobody knew where I worked. Not any of my friends, not any family members, because I had just taken this job maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and I wasn't very proud of the job that I had. And I was sitting there like despondent, looking up into the ceiling, just feeling as though my life had just come to an end, because this is what Gurudev thinks of me. And the phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and I don't really want to even talk to any of the clients. And of all the people who call me, it's Gurudev. How did he get my phone number? How was he able to call me? And he just said, Michael, I just want to tell you one thing. A diamond cutter only cuts diamonds. Jai Gurudev. And that was it. And in that moment, I could just sense that whole play of consciousness, that whole time that I was there with getting the camera and not getting the camera, and fighting with Janelle and her opinions about me. It was just a play of consciousness. And, the Guru is only there to cut that ego. And that's happened to me so many times with him. And we're all diamonds. It's not that I'm a diamond and you're not a diamond, or anybody who's watching this is not a diamond. And the ways of the master are so mysterious. And sometimes it could be very painful, the execution of destroying the ego.
Michael, I just wanted to know, you mentioned about your job and how you switched your job. You just switched to a new job. So what I want to ask is, you decided to be a full-timer. And many times when you decide to be full-timer, you need to be sure about from where the finances will be managed. Because and in those times, it was more about Even not even about the honorarium. The organization was not that structured before Silver Jubilee. So, did you face any challenge uh, for the money or for your house, something like that, and how you managed it then?
Uh, absolutely. And my mind just went blank. What?
You asked Gurudev about it?
No. What happened was I was in India for 2 years, as I mentioned. And then he decided at the last minute to send me back to the United States. And I didn't want to come home. But he said, no, it's time for you to go back, find a job for a while, and then we'll see what happens. So I went back to the US and I had an apartment that was still available. And I moved into the apartment and I started looking for a job. And I couldn't find a
After
job.
being full time?
I wouldn't say I was full time. I just had left the US. I had subletted my apartment and I went to Bangalore and I was there for 2 years. And there was no concept of full time. It was just, there I was. There was no, I guess I was full time, but I didn't even think of it in that term. And he told me to go back and he told me to get a job. So I started looking for a job. And I'll tell you a little bit about my employment history. Whenever Gurudev would come to the United States, as I said, he would come for 3 weeks at a time. So I had a really nice job, a nice career, and he was coming, so I would want 3 weeks off. So I would go to my boss and I would say, I need to take some time off. And they'd say, okay, sure. I'm taking 3 weeks off. And they'd say, 3 weeks? I said, listen, it's a family emergency. I need to take off some time. And I would get the 3 weeks off and I would do the entire tour with him. And then he was coming back. He came back in 6 months. And again, it would be 3 weeks that I'd want off. So I'd go to my boss and I'd say, I need 3 weeks off again. And I said, well, we just gave you 3 weeks off. I'd say, I know, but it's a family emergency. But it just was a family emergency. I know, but I need those 3 weeks off. They wouldn't give it to me. They'd give me like 3 days. I'd quit. I just quit the job because I couldn't imagine that Gurudev would be in the United States for 3 weeks and I was going to sit in front of a stupid desk and God was here. The divine essence was here. How could I do that? So this would happen again and again. And eventually I would have no credibility at a company. I would stay for like 6 months and I would leave my job. So the qualities of jobs would get less and less and less. And the amount of income that was coming was less and less. And then eventually Gurudev invited me to come to India, and I did. And I was there for 2 years and then came back. He told me to get a job. So looking for a job was really a challenge because my employment history was all over the place. And then I had disappeared. I wasn't working for 2 years. So I had one job interview with a Japanese company that created a new toilet that had a motor in it that absorbed the smell of elimination and when you go to the toilet. And he was planning to market this in airports and hospitals and schools and industrially through the industrial world. And I was being considered as the sales manager for this company. And I remember taking the brochure of these toilets with a little fan and motor that took the odor out and sending it Federal Express to the ashram in Bangalore and with a note to Gurudev, this is what you sent me back to the United States for? I never got an answer from him, but I do know that he got the brochure and he looked at it. So once again, Guru Purnima comes up. Seems like a lot of Guru Purnima stories are coming here. And we were in Aptos, California for this celebration. And the two of us were in the room together, Gurudev and myself. And he just looked at me and he said, now it's time for you to be a full-time teacher. And he says, you can drop everything. You can drop your apartment. You'll start traveling and going around the world. And he said, don't ever compare yourself to anybody else. There will be other people who will be able to travel with me around the world. There will be other people who will be able to do things. And don't ever be concerned about finances, that they can do this because they're wealthy, or they can be able to do this because they have a big inheritance and they can travel. They don't need to work. He says, it's only to the level of your merit that you'll be able to spend time with me and travel with me. It has nothing to do with money or power or influence or anything like that. Whatever is yours will come to you, and whatever is not yours will fall away. And I said, okay. And oddly enough, I still managed to travel with him and go many places and spend lots of quality time with him. And how I got there and how it manifested, I have no idea. But somehow the finances were there. And I was on the tightest shoestring budget. We got so little money. I would say I was below the poverty line in the amount of the stipend that was given to us as a full-time teacher. And even when I traveled to teach, my first teaching were in the Caribbean. I went to Trinidad to teach. Gurudev made sure that we had so little, less than what you needed to survive, just so you were dependent on grace for everything. And somehow everything managed. It went well. But I would think after about 10 years or 12 years of living in people's homes and being on the road and living life so frugally, it became a little too much for me. And I have a dear friend, Chris Reed, who had started a natural soda called Reed's Ginger Brew. He became very wealthy and very successful with his company. And since I was a really good friend of his, he called me up one day and he said, Michael, if you could spread the knowledge as much as you did for Gurudev, I would like you to work for me. I would like you to be the head of marketing for my company, because I know you have a lot of insights, you know how to do things, and you're just very talented. So we negotiated and we talked about the opportunity of me leaving being full-time and working for him. And he was giving me such an extraordinary compensation plan that I was going to be making 6 digits, and I could work 4 days a week. I could take off time if I wanted to teach silence courses, and if I wanted to travel with Gurudev. He was so focused on hiring me to work for his company. And I would think about it and I would think, okay, I would have all this money. What would I do with this money? Would it really make me happy? I was just so confused. So, and I didn't feel comfortable not being full-time. You know, I just felt like, can I really give that life up for money? Would that really give me what I was looking for? So I tried calling Gurudev. And in those days, you know, it was very easy to reach him. He was very accessible. But for some reason, I could not reach him. I would call India and the line would cut. And then I would catch him in Malaysia and the phone would go dead. Or I could never reach him. And this went on for like 2 weeks. And I needed to give Chris an answer. Was I going to take the job? And I decided no. And I didn't take the job. It was a lot of money. I probably could have saved a tremendous amount, invested in my future financially, but I didn't take the job. And Guru Purnima again. This time it was in Canada. And it was before the course, and we were all staying in someone's home who lived in Montreal. And she lived in this really lovely apartment building there where there was a swimming pool downstairs. And Gurudev really liked to go in the water and swim. So he was in the pool, and I had gone down with him and brought the towels and all those things. And I was just sitting on the side of the pool watching him swim back and forth. And he swam all the way up to me where I was, and he took his head out of the water and he said to me, "Why didn't you take that job?" And then he swam away. And then he swam back again, and he said, "You should have taken that job. It was a lot of money." No, he didn't wait for an answer. He just swam away. And then he swam up to me again, and then he said, "You didn't take the job because you thought I would be disappointed." And didn't wait for an answer, and he just swam away. And there was never any conversation about that. And then later that week, we were at the Guru Purnima celebration. And at the end of the course, this young man who had started his own company, he was extremely wealthy. In fact, he had donated a lot of money to the organization and contributed in many ways. A very affluent fellow. He just came up to me at the end of the course, and he just said, "Michael, I just feel as though you could use some money. Maybe you'd like to buy some clothes or get a computer or something like that." And he gave me an envelope, and there was cash in the envelope, and there was $3,000 in there. And that was it. He didn't even wait. This young guy, he didn't even wait for a thank you or anything. It was the first time that anybody had ever given me money within the art of living. And I went up to Gurudev, and I said, "I just got an envelope with $3,000 as a gift to me. What do I do with this money?" And he looked at me and he said, "Keep it." And that was it. Yeah, no other conversation. And obviously I kept the money. And somehow at that moment, any fear that I had of how am I going to manage, how am I going to manage my finances, all of that, that fear just completely dissolved. That must have been 20 years ago or more. I have never once balanced my checking account. I have never looked at, is there enough money in my account from month to month? I don't even pay attention to that at all. And somehow there's money that's always there. In fact, there's excess of money that's there. I never understand how come I have more money than my expenses are. And it's like magic. And whenever something is needed, it's just completely there. So yes, there was a lot of fear, a lot of uncomfort, and the most hardest part of it was, like you live in the ashram, and there's a lot of devotees who live in the ashram in India, and there's devotees who live in the German ashram or in Boone in North Carolina. In those days, there was no ashram. There was no place to live. So I was on the road week by week by week by week. I would stay in a place for 5 days, and then on the 6th day, I would leave. Because how long can you stay at someone's house, sleeping on a couch and having to eat other people's food and no personal space at all? Very, very, very challenging. And I would ask Gurudev over and over again, can I have my own place? Can I get an apartment? And it never would happen. He wouldn't say no, but whoever was like the administrators for the organization, they would manipulate it in some way. And I could never get a place to live. I felt like it was like a cat and mouse game, or I was playing chess with Gurudev. Like I would go to his room and I would ask him about getting my own place to live. and then he wouldn't answer, but then we would be in satsang and we would be with, 200 people in a room, and he would look at me and he'd say, Michael, why don't you move here to New Jersey and open up a center and live in a center? And everybody in the room would applaud. Yay, great idea. I didn't want to live in a center. I wanted my own place. I just wanted my own, where I could just close the door and nobody would be there. So I never had and this went on for years, 7, 8, 10 years. I didn't have a place to live. I literally lived out of a suitcase. And for an American, living out of a suitcase for, at least 15 years, that was a real challenge. And then somehow, finally, I got a place to live. Gurudev acquiesced, and I got a little apartment for myself. And all that tapas was over. And now I live in a beautiful house.
On top of Beverly Hills.
Yeah, in Beverly Hills, of all places of Beverly Hills. And Gurudev came to my house and blessed it, which was really lovely. So, yeah, I think all that fear of what's going to happen to me is really unfounded, because we really are all protected, and we take one step towards the divine, and the divine takes 2 steps towards us. And I'm sure you have experienced it yourself. We all live in a world of miracles. So, yeah.